Hey everyone, I have John with me today, and we're talking about apparel design, we're talking about streetwear, we're talking about building this yourself. Of course, on the channel, we talk a lot about print on demand. As many of you know, we've even started to talk about branding. We've got some guests coming up for that and talking about how to make marketing material and logos and style guides and things like that. But we haven't really talked about what it takes to kind of build a clothing brand or start a t-shirt brand or a streetwear brand or whatever. And I mean, there's none better than John to talk about that. And so that's what we're going to do today. John, before we get into the specifics and kind of the nitty gritty of like where we start kind of from square one, because I do want to get into some things like what can we expect to spend? What are the kinds of materials that we're looking at that we need? What kind of like presses or things like that? I really do want to dive into that. But before that, can you talk a little bit about just who you are? What you do at the channel on YouTube. Of course, I've got that link below and I'm going to show it on the video as well, but just give us kind of a brief on who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Awesome, Drew. Appreciate you for having me on, man. I was just talking offline about how I actually watch your tutorials on Kittl because like there's so many different features there and little on nuances. You guys make it super easy to use. So my background and how I started before I was a YouTuber, you know, I think today when you ask any high school or college kid, what do you want to do? You know, 50% of them say, I want to be on YouTube. I want to be an influencer. All right. So I think it's such a common answer. For me, I never planned to be a YouTuber, never planned to be an influencer. I kind of just fell into it. And the way I fell into it was a journey that I think a lot of people also take. And I want to share a quick background and story just to kind of paint people a perspective about why the type of content is on my channel. So back in 2009, when I was in college, I was right out of high school. It's my first year, freshman year of college. No background in the apparel industry, no background in business. My family, my parents are, immigrants from Mexico. So first generation here going to go to school. And I had an idea. I wanted to start a business. And if you remember back in 2008, 2009, it was like the height of the recession, right? Like the housing market, the worst time to think about starting a business. And this was before Shark Tank even came out and became popular. So the idea of entrepreneurship for me was like, wow, I've always wanted to do it. I always had like a calling to do it ever since I was a kid. Like when I went to Mexico and I saw where the corn came from, where the food was grown and how it got to people's homes, you know, it just really inspired me and it kind of changed my perspective. So when I was finally going into college, I remember I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll start my business in 10 years. So maybe by the time I'm 30, I can get started. And I think that's a common theme with a lot of people. They're like, hey, you know what? Let me just toy around with it. And then maybe in 10 years, I'll actually do something. But for me, it was like, you know what? It was a similar thought process. Let me go to school. Let me get educated. And then maybe in the future, when I have money, I can start. And I was very fortunate that I had an incredible professor. His name was Kevin Rayford, and he was a business 101 class, and it was a night class I was taking because I work full time. And I was in the classroom. I said, hey, I want to start a business. He challenged me to write a business plan for the semester.
Nice.
We wrote it. And that's kind of what started the entrepreneurship journey, was me kind of putting a plan together of the idea that I had. From that, back in the day, it was all Google searches, right? There was really no YouTube videos on people starting businesses, or that wasn't interesting. You know, it was cat videos, prank videos. It was all the vlogs. People watched that.
Yeah.
There wasn't many people teaching on YouTube. So,
physical books, you know, physical books.
Exactly. Yep. You had to go to the library. You had to open up some books, you know, how to start a clothing brand for dummies. They never made one. They should.
They never made one. That's your next book right there. Yeah.
That should be my next book. And I just remember it was a very, very hard journey, you know, like starting it with zero, starting it from the ground up, like no connections. We went out, we would drive to California, meet with manufacturers, build out our supply chain. You know, there was no like easy way to do it.
Right.
And so we did it the hard way, and we learned a lot. We designed backpacks, apparel, and we would sell it at classrooms, we'd sell it at events. E-commerce wasn't as big as it was. You know, Instagram was still for taking pictures of food. So it wasn't like anything was set. You know, it was a whole new sphere, and it was a very exciting time in your early 20s to like start a business, especially in that environment. Yeah. So I remember the reason that I started YouTube and how this all comes full circle to everybody listening is as we were doing all this work, I remember we had this huge opportunity, and this was back in 2014. It was everything that we had planned for. So if people aren't really aware of the industry, traditionally how retail worked is so if you go into PacSun, if you go into Tilly's, if you go into any retail, traditional brick and mortar retail store, traditionally how they purchase was through distributors.
Right.
So the distributors are the people that would essentially grab the Stussies. They'd grab, all the brands that you'd see in all these different stores, and they would essentially distribute the products into the different channels. So distributors essentially had the direct connection to the retail stores. So if you wanted your product to be sold in all these hundreds of stores nationwide, you needed to work with a reputable distributor that would essentially take your products and make sure that they managed the supply chain for you. You were in charge of making sure that you designed them, that they were being made, and that you were able to meet certain price points, because your profit was whatever you sold it to the distributor for, and then a distributor would have to
sell it for whatever.
Sell it for whatever
they want. Yeah, very similar to a distillery, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So back then, that was like the route if you wanted your brand to go viral, right? And this was still 2014. Okay. So for us, we locked in a distributor deal. We were like, hey, this is an upstart distributor. They were working with Wiz Khalifa. They were working with Monster headphones at the time, which was huge, just like Beats headphones before, like at the hype.
Right.
And so we were like, yo, this is on the up and up. Let's put the rest of our money in our bank account into making sure that we can get these products at these price points. So we did a lot of work that year, and we displayed it at Magic trade show convention, which was like the height of the apparel industry at that time. Was like, yo, if you're here and you're selling, you got Wiz Khalifa, you got all these artists, like we're about to go nationwide. It's a real thing.
Wow.
And I just remember like being so excited. We prepared for it. We executed on it. And after the show, it was like no answer back from the distributor that we were working with for the entire of 2014. And we're like, yo, what's going on? And a few weeks later, he gets back to me, and he's pretty much crying on the phone because, he's not a bad guy. Great guy. But he tells me, hey, John, I'm sorry, man. I failed you guys. The VCs that were funding the distributor pulled out.
Yeah.
So we don't have any funding for it. We can't continue the business. I wish you guys good luck. And that was pretty much all we got, Drew. That was literally.
And you had already poured some money into this, right?
Oh, thousands, tens of thousands. Like we were up at the display. We really went all out. And now that was like the remaining profits. We put a lot of our efforts and time plus the money, so here we are. And I'm just like, what am I going to do now? I'm 24. I don't have a job because I quit my full-time job to pursue this opportunity.
Okay.
So now I don't have a job. I'm unemployed. I'm unemployable. Like who else? What am I going to do? So here I am sitting, kind of feeling sorry for myself. And I remember those times that they were tough. And my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, she told me, because she was making YouTube videos, I was helping her kind of edit every once in a while. And she was like, hey, you should start a YouTube channel. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a YouTuber. Like, it's not what I do. And she was like, no, you should start one and just share what you wish you knew before you started this business. And I was like, okay, I could do that. So locked myself in a room, and I started filming. I filmed for like 4 hours.
Wow.
And just the 10 things, like the 10 steps to launch a clothing brand on a budget. And these were steps, like things that people weren't talking about back then. It's so common knowledge now, but back then it was like, hey, how do you incorporate a business at a low cost? Like, where do you get your domain? How do you launch your website on a budget? Like, this was before Shopify was really big. And I beat myself up for not buying stock back then, but it was like before Shopify was a thing, and I was pushing it because I was like, yo, this is huge. Like, this is big. This is going to change the world, because I remember how much money I spent on my website, and Shopify is making it super easy for everybody else to do. So that's how my YouTube channel started. It was about sharing information that I learned over the years that I really wish I knew before I spent tens of thousands of dollars, years of my time and effort. And then just finding ways for people to get started with a very low cost. And for me, like, I made those relationships with the manufacturers. I had, the background in it. So I was just sharing the knowledge that I wish somebody would have shared with me, because everything back then was so secretive. Nobody wanted to give you their sauce.
I've heard this. Yeah. I talked with Gary Agenet from I think it's T-shirt Help Desk.
T-shirt Help Desk.
He said the same thing. He said the same thing. It was all gatekeepers of the the clothing brand success.
Big time, man. Because, and then at the same time, I respected it because I remembered how many hours and how many days I spent trying to find these connections, right? So like they weren't on Google, they weren't on Google Maps, they weren't just on TikTok and Instagram promoting stuff. They were like, they were in an alleyway in the behind, you know, like the freeway. And like you had to go out there and drive around and look through stores for days to find these connections and these people. So it was gatekeeped because it was so hard to reach. So nobody wanted to share their plug. So when I started doing it, it kind of flipped the industry in its head, right? Everybody was like, yo, what? You're literally sharing everything I wish. Like I spent so many weeks to try to get that contact and you're just sharing it on YouTube for free. I'm like, yeah, everything is free here. So everybody was selling manufacturers lists and people still do today. They're sharing like all these things. I'm like, you know what, guys, go download it here. It's all free. It's available to you because with information, you could take action, but you got to take the action to get the results. So very few people are going to take the action to get those results. So the information, there's so much of it out there. It's about taking the action and getting the results. And that's what we're pushing our community to do now.
Yeah. Wow. That is not what I expected joining this, because on the front end, everything just looks absolutely blatantly successful for you. I mean, your channel is amazing, thriving. You got Streetcrafter, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, I haven't done my due diligence and gone all the way back through all of your videos.
There's a lot of videos. There's like 500.
Close to 500 videos on there. Yeah. So that's so powerful, because I hope the people listening see this upward trend to then failure for you. So things are going well, and then it's just like absolute wall, right? And an absolute wall with everything banking on it, like quite literally everything banking on it. So if we turn into now, like today, 2024 and beyond, I want to talk about the practical steps for someone that is obviously hungry and will take action, like you said. I think this is correlative to print on demand, right? That everybody's like, oh, it's oversaturated, like I can't compete into this niche because everybody else is it, right? So that's because they're taking the information, but they're not acting on it, right? So very similar here. You're saying like, okay, well, here's all the steps, by the way. Here's 17 heat presses that you could get for under $500. Here's transfer sheets that are 10 cents a sheet or whatever. Go get started, right? So I want to get into that, because I think I have a lot of friends and I've listened to a lot of users that are coming to Kittl because they can easily make their merch or apparel or t-shirt designs or beanie designs or whatever, but they're blocked in just having a blueprint, I think, on what to do, and specifically what to do first. Maybe they already have, like, let's say the style in mind, right? They've got this style for an apparel or apparel series. They've got things kind of mapped out. This is the style of design I'm going to make. I'm targeting these kind of people. Okay, shoot. What do I do? Like, what do I do with the design? Do I have to like immediately hold on to like 500 blanks? And then, right, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, because obviously you have the kind of blueprint in mind. So, and I'll just kind of follow up with questions throughout this, but do you mind just walking us through like what you would teach someone now that's like, all right, cool, you got your idea, you got maybe your brand, your name, design style. All right, let's put it into play. Like, what would you walk through with someone?
That's incredible. It's an incredible question, Drew, because I would say that what you just listed is definitely better than what 85% or maybe 90% of the people that are launching are doing.
Oh, yeah, they don't have the front end stuff, right? They don't have the like research.
Yeah, so
okay.
For the most part, the people that have designs, people that got a brand name, they got like a market in mind, like they've already done like 90% more work than most people that are thinking about starting and take action, right?
Okay.
The people that are taking action a lot of time don't have that. Right. So yeah, it's super interesting. So the people that are taking action are literally starting with none of that really in mind. Maybe they researched it and they're
trying to go straight to the deliverables, basically.
Yep. They're like, They're like, let me go do it. Let me go do it and figure it out.
Right. Okay.
so I think the people that are researching, and I come across this a lot. So I also have we have a free community. It's available in our YouTube channel, and people are in there. We're always talking, live streaming, DM. So I get this a lot, and I want to say it's those people are definitely always overthinking, and I always want to challenge them, and I always challenge them to start doing, right? Because I'll give you a good example. My wife was a perfect example, actually, more like when she was getting started. Incredible creative, super design focused. She really knows her audience. She comes up with amazing designs. And it's so close to her heart, though, that it takes her too long to put out. But when she does put it out, it does incredibly well. It sells out. It continues to sell. It continues to make her money on autopilot, because it's just that good and people love it and they can see the passion behind it. But she's afraid to put out more because I want to say this relates to a lot of creatives and a lot of the people that you just named, is because it's too close to her heart. It's too close to her identity, right? So I think a lot of the time when we're launching something, we're launching it with like, oh, this is a piece of me, right? Like if people don't like it, that means they don't like me, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So it's like, it's too close to who they are. And I always challenge them, and I challenged her. And finally, when she broke through it, she was like, you know what? This design doesn't embody who I am. Like, I am who I am, and what I'm putting out doesn't matter if it does good or bad. Like, it's something I got to put out, right? So when it comes to a lot of designers, clothing brand owners, people with an idea, I always challenge them to think, like, to try to disconnect first. Like, don't make that creation a part of who you are. You got to treat it like you're going into work and you're putting something out.
It can be important to you. Yep. It can be important to you, obviously. Yes. But yeah, yes. the mindset piece is what you're kind of getting into, is saying like, this is not my entire being or my agenda on this design. Yes. However, I like to think of it as like, your vibe. Your vibe invites your tribe. Right. Yes, it's kind of like that. It's almost like once you can get over that and you can say like, this is what I'm putting out because it's most important to me. And I believe it's going to invite the people that care about it too.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's got to be important to you for sure.
Yeah.
But then you can't tie the results to your personal, personal net worth, right? To like how you treat yourself. Okay. Because sometimes you're going to have flops, and that's okay. But sometimes when you encounter those obstacles and those hurdles, that first hurdle that like, nobody liked it, now you're going to stop doing it. Right. So
you're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I always challenge people first to disconnect from the craft, right? Like, it's got to be important to you. You got to put your passion behind it. I'm not discounting any of that, because that's how the best products are made today. Right. It's passion. It's an understanding, a deep rooted understanding of who they're selling to, and going, differentiating yourself in a certain way. So that's absolutely necessary. Yeah. But the other part of it is like, don't let that slow you down. Don't let that prevent you from launching the follow-up because you were successful or unsuccessful on the last one. Like, don't let it define you. Keep moving forward, and then you'll keep building a tribe. So once people are over that, the next thing I usually ask is, okay, show me your Instagram, show me your accounts for your brand. And oftentimes, I want to say about 80-90% of the time, it's a hidden page. It's private. It's either private, it's non-existent, or they just launched it, but they're not talking about it. And I said, you need to start building content here, even before you launch a product.
Interesting. So, okay.
Mm-hmm. Even before a product is launched, you got to start being active in that account. So a lot of times, people kind of think about it the opposite way. They wait until the product is launched to start creating the page and content.
Right. Yes. Right? Yes. I have fallen privy to that. I have fallen subject to that in my own demise. Yes.
Yes. But now you have to create content in order to build a tribe before you inject products into it. Right. So you gotta start creating content that is about your brand, that is about your business, in a way that attracts people and followers to that need, right? So if you're doing a crafty like swimwear, for instance, it's more handmade. You got to create content around nature, around the handmade artisan. Like, you got to start creating reels of the product being developed, and get really creative with how you're going to market it before you even say anything's available. Because the people that are following you with that content are going to be the ones most likely to buy.
Yep.
So a lot of times people want to launch something just out the gate, and then they wonder why they don't get any sales. And it's because they've never attracted an audience that was ready to buy. So that's the first step.
Right.
Or second, I guess. If
Yeah.
mindset, second is build a community before launching a product.
Yeah. And if just to play, I guess, devil's advocate, because I know this is what a lot of people are asking, is, well, I mean, that's just a lot easier said than done. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of effort to, you know, put these reels together and then nobody see them or nobody, you know, follow, or the algorithm doesn't like what I'm doing, or it doesn't pick up on this specific trend or this design style, or Pinterest doesn't show my pins to any, you know what I mean? And I guess it's not so much a question, because at the end of it, it still goes back to those that do something, that do anything, right? That take action are going to be more successful than those that don't. Right. But what, I mean, yeah, I guess because I know so many people will ask this, and I feel like it can be a real subject. It can be a real issue or a hurdle. Is what would you say to someone that's saying like, oh, John, that's so much easier said than done, man. Like, yeah, I can take a video of me packaging this shirt, but like nobody watches it. You know what I mean? It's like not everybody has a 430,000 subscriber YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be those people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. And to that, I would always say everybody starts at zero.
Yeah.
You know, like we all start at zero. Everybody is at zero. I launched my channel at 0 subscribers, and you get 1 view at a time, right? And you build it up as it goes.
Exactly.
And the beauty about it, and this is really where it pays off, is that as you start to build content, it's not going to be successful up front. And even as I build out my Instagram, or we try to build out TikTok, there's so many nuances there that I'm like, yo, why is this one getting a lot and this one's not getting any?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I always, I think I finally figured out what that thing is. Every time I do this, but, to that, I would say, like, you got to start somewhere, and you got to start putting content out, and start consuming content. So I would say identify the brands, at least 10 brands that are in your space, 10 influencers in the space, 10 brands in the space, and watch what they're doing, and watch what's getting good interactions, watch what's working for them. Read the comments, read the comments of those posts. So that's how I started. Like when I was starting to grow my channel, I was like, you know what? Like, what are other people in other industries doing, and how are they filming, and how are they sharing? So identify 10 people either within your space, within the aesthetic that you're looking to get into, within the messaging that you're trying to portray, and see how they're doing it. And then it's literally a science experiment. It's a little experiment you're gonna conduct. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to do a style of video in this form. Maybe I'm just going to do carousels here. Maybe I should do motivational quotes or some type of quotes. So it doesn't have to be all the same style of content, but you got to test it. And then whatever's working, you double down on. And I think right now, one of the greatest hacks is just resharing content, you know? So like, if you do like something, reshare it, comment on it, react to it, you know, do a stitch where now you're like reacting to that content, give your perspective to it, you know? There's so many different ways to make content now that it's a lot easier. It's not necessarily that bottleneck anymore.
And one thing I think is super vital for everyone that's kind of down on the social media aspect of growth, right? In this, oh God, this reel only got 30 views, or like this post only got 10 likes. I was listening to a podcast with Sean Cannell and some other people, great YouTube instructor, teacher. That's kind of where I learned all of my stuff from. Can't remember exactly who he was interviewing or who said this, but it was life changing for me in my super small channel and building from nothing. Was, yeah, okay, so your reel got 30 views. If you walked into a room of 30 people right now, I think you'd be overwhelmed. Like, I think we severely underestimate how many eyeballs that actually is. If you think about it, like, yeah, when I put out a new reel for me, or if we work on something really hard for Kittl with the amount of audience that we have, and it gets a couple hundred views, it feels weird because like it just doesn't correlate to the audience size. And so then you say, okay, something's going on with the algorithm, or it's not showing it to our followers. And that's kind of a different discussion. But when you're first starting out, and like I remember starting out and my videos would get like 100, 90 to 100 views with like 10 subscribers. And like I remember feeling like kind of depressed. I was like, dude, this video is great. I worked hours on this and only got 100 views. And then I listened to that podcast and I was like, if I walked into my kitchen and there was 100 people in there, that would be wild.
And it's always surreal. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I got 100 views on that video. So the next one I want to try to get 200. And then the next one I want to try to get 250. And then and so like the same thing applies to all of these Instagram reel or TikTok videos or a post, with impressions. It's like, yeah, you only got 10 likes on your post, but does it have 10,000 impressions? That's a lot of eyeballs. That's, so there's a lot that goes into this. And, you and I could probably even do another video later on kind of building the social media aspect of a clothing brand. Mm-hmm. But after we kind of think about that, our mindset, we start building, we start posting, we start acting essentially is the key metric. I think you said that was step 2.
Step 2, build an audience. Yep.
Yeah. So what comes after that?
So after you create an audience, right? And just like you were saying, it's the views up front don't necessarily matter as much as you taking the action up front, right? Because and it's about continual, consistent effort, not just about doing it the one time and then in a month you do it again. It's about holding yourself to a certain, like you got to hold yourself to goals, right? So if you say I'm going to post 3 times a week, do 3 times a week, like it's whatever you can manage, but you got to stay consistent because the way that all the algorithms on any platform work is that they do prioritize consistency. And the more that you're learning and shifting and adapting, like the views start growing as you start becoming consistent and you start performing consistently. So build up an audience, be consistent with it. Once you're consistent with it, you'll start to develop a relationship with real people, right? And I think sometimes we forget that those eyeballs are real people, right? So don't be afraid to respond to a message. Don't be afraid to get on a call with them, learn about them, right? Because if you're going to launch a product, you do need feedback. You need real feedback from a community of people that understand what you're trying to go after. We all need something that we call an amen corner, right? Somebody that you could turn to, that you can get feedback from, that you can make adjustments with, or that'll be there for you in case it fails, right? And I think that's so underrated today because it feels like social media is there's no real people there. It's just eyeballs, right? But there's real people that are there. So so once you start to analyze your market, right, or once you build your audience, you start to analyze that audience, right? So whether it's through surveys, phone calls, group discussion, live streams, get to know what they actually want. Because what you're attempting to design or what you're designing may only need a little bit of adjustment in order for it to resonate with that market. And if you can get that feedback in real time, you're able to make those adjustments and then you're able to show it. So now you start to embed that product into the audience, right? Whether it's like, hey guys, I heard what you were saying. I loud and clear understood you. Check out the design we're dropping. We're thinking about making some t-shirts, or would you like hats? Right. And now you're like starting a discussion. Like you're like, hey, which product should we launch this design with? So now you're actually letting people know like, oh, they're about to drop a line. And I really like that. Like, that's hard. That's like, you start to read the comments like, oh, that's legit. Right. So it's affirming that your direction is going the right way. And then as you affirm your direction, you start to actually design the products. Right. So whether you're going to take I usually say that it's going to be, we have something called the Apparel game plan, and it's available for a free download as well. Okay. And how it works is that there's really 4 major plays that you could do as a clothing brand. Okay. All right. You could either pre-buy your products, meaning that you're going to get them made and then you have to stock them. With you mean like get it made as in like it's already got the design on it? Yep, it's already got the designs on them. You're holding on to stock. Yeah. You're holding on to stock. Yep. So you're sourcing for blanks and you're going to hold on to stock. And that's like the most common approach. And a lot of times people take that approach because they realize, hey, if I buy in bulk, I could get a way lower price. Correct. And I can make a way higher margin. Sure. Right. And I think that's like the number one reason why people do it when they're first about to launch a brand. And I'm always so against it because everybody I talk to that does it, 90% of the people that do it are holding on to stock from a year ago. And that's so like, and now we're at the current now. Yeah.
we're at the
Uh-huh.
exact issue that I was hoping to get to. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of times people want to stock up on inventory in order to have a better selling price, more margin, more profit, run a business, right? And in this industry, it's definitely not the approach. It's not the approach to take when you're just getting started and testing out. It
Hmm.
is the approach you take once you know you got some hits and like you're consistent with your sell
Yeah,
throughs and you
a
know,
consistent winner, right? A
yep,
bestseller, if you will.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep. You can stock up on things that you know are going to sell. So that's the first approach. The second approach is you're either going to pre-order, right? So
Mm.
pre-ordering is the act of, hey guys, I'm launching
Mm.
this special edition T-shirt, right? So for instance, if I'm wearing this, it's a cut and sew garment. It looks incredible. Your audience loved it. You got enough feedback, and you're like, you know what? Let me develop this product. Um, Traditionally in cut and sew, you would either go to Alibaba or a factory overseas, and that person would essentially have you place a minimum order quantity, which you now need to stock and fulfill. So it's almost landing you to the first one, but it's putting you into a bigger hole because most cut and sew options are minimum going to be 5,000, 5 to 10,000 spend for you to do cut
Wow.
and sew.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very expensive if you're just getting started. But the pre-order method allows you to kind of take advantage of that unique cut and sew production without needing to go out of pocket. So the way that the pre-order campaigns would work is you would develop a sample. So you'd pay the manufacturer for them to actually give you a sample. A lot of times a sample for a shirt like this might be anywhere between 100 to 250 for you to get the sample. You have it and you're like, okay, this fits nice. You make some social media videos with it, take some photos, really hype up the fact that you're getting this product in. And now you launch the campaign. You say, hey, this is a pre-order campaign. You order it now. You're going to receive it between 14 to 21 days, whatever that window of delivery that the factory told you could get it by. Add another week or two, right? Just to make sure you can
Yeah.
fulfill it on time. So that's the second approach, is a pre-order method. And it works great for very custom products. The third approach is essentially a print-on-demand model. And a print-on-demand model is you going either to Printful, to Gelato, to Printify, to any of these print-on-demand platforms, and you're essentially building out your collection, and you're marketing that collection. And anytime somebody buys, it gets shipped out to their customer, right? It's the
Yep.
most common way to start with e-commerce, and it's the one that I definitely always recommend people start with because it's super low cost. You don't even need any equipment. All you need is really good designs, but you also need an audience that's ready to buy.
Mm.
Because a lot of times people fall into the trap of, hey, I launched my store. I'm not getting any traffic. I'm not getting any sales. I don't know what's going on. Can you look at my website? Right? They're always run into that.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you ordered a product? Have you actually
Have you
taken
even seen
photos?
what it looks like? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen what it looks like? Where's your content showing me this product? Like there's nothing, right? You got a logo and you got a graphic design, but it doesn't look like a real brand,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
print on demand is so easy to start with, but a lot of times because it's so easy, nobody's doing the legwork of actually developing it as a brand, or as it doesn't look like a real product. It looks like something that might get shipped from overseas. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. A customer facing, it looks like
Mm.
you're not sure if this is real.
Correct.
So
Correct.
print on demand is one option. It's the easiest to start, but it's always the one that most people don't work the right way. And then the fourth option is essentially you stocking up on blanks, or you stocking up on your own supplies, raw materials, but now you're actually making things from home. So you're either making it as your orders are coming in, or you're sampling it in order to show off to your community,
Mhm.
which you then plug into print on demand, or you order from a screen printer or a bulk supplier. So making it on your own and sampling it cuts a lot of the lead times. It cuts a lot of the back and forth with is this going to look good? Like you can literally make it, approve of it, launch it, and then start fulfilling on the back end. So
Mhm.
those are the four major plays that I think most people in the industry are taking, with the first one being the biggest mistake that usually is made, is stocking up on inventory. The second one being the pre-order method that is usually not used. It's underutilized, but it's super powerful. And it's actually a way that we sold some custom cut and sew products back after we launched with Steve Harvey. We were on TV with Steve Harvey back in like 2018 or so.
Wow. Yeah.
And we launched it with a pre-order method before we got on his show. And then we were able to fund the production plus all of the upcoming sales. So it's a really good strategy if you have an audience.
Wow. Yeah. And I would say that a lot of people either fall into uh, one or three. They didn't know about two, and they're doing four poorly. So
Yes.
that's just me being
Yeah.
raw Drew for a second. So let's keep one and two in mind. And I'll briefly say something on three because I want to focus in on four because I get a lot of questions about this.
Okay.
With three, that of course is what we talk a lot about. We teach a lot of print on demand. We teach a lot of integrating with your own Shopify or Squarespace or Etsy or Amazon Seller Central or wherever. Obviously, I completely 100% agree with you. It is the easiest method to get started with because you do literally nothing. Like you make the design. Excuse me, I shouldn't say literally nothing, but I mean to make the shirt. Like you do nothing to make the shirt, right? You make sure that design is there. You make sure everything is cohesive. I still would 100% order a sample just to make sure that it works, right? The people that have been doing that for a while are going to make the claim, which I think is true, that the profit margin is a lot smaller, and it is because you're not doing anything to make the shirt. So, right, it's bittersweet because yes, you're making like what $6 on a shirt maybe, or $10 if you're charging a lot, and it's not the $25, $26 you could make if you do it yourself, which is moving into option 4 or the pre-order method, which is a little bit different. You could probably even charge more. So I think what my advice has been, and I wonder what you think, but for someone that's growing a successful print-on-demand shop, at some point, I think it does become, unless they just wanted to be completely passive and sit on the back end and not do anything at all. But if they want it to become lucrative and actually make a lot more money on it, I think it makes sense to move something to like number 4, where they can actually cut a ton of that production cost because they know what works. Now, that's probably less likely than the people that are sitting in the number 4 category that are hungry to learn and know what it takes to do this myself, i.e. screen printing or heat pressing, or if you're going to get one of those like X tool things and like print a silk screen and like do a smaller, you know what I'm talking about? It's a little bit smaller. It's not a massive rig. Like it's a lot of money to set up and do a massive rig for screen printing and get the dyes and do it all yourself. It's a lot of work. So I think heat press is obviously a lot better option. And that's why we love partnering with Rich over at Hustle Ninjas, because he teaches a lot of that and how to do vinyl and puff print. So if we can focus in on number 4 for just a little bit, where do you walk someone through with the most efficient way to do that? Do we start with a cost profit analysis to say, here's what a press would cost, or here's where we get, here's what screens cost, or here's whatever, you know what I mean? And it could be either option. Maybe they had print on demand and it's going pretty well and they want to make more money, or they're like, I've been in business a little bit, print on demand is fine, but it won't make me enough money. I'm going to go number 4. So I know I just threw a lot at you, and I don't exactly know what the question is, but hopefully you can interpret that.
Yeah,
and
I could kind of answer to that. When it comes to print on demand, yes, your margins aren't going to be as high as you making it yourself, or if you order in bulk and you're able to get way lower costs on your products. But what I would say is you got to think of your storefront. You got to think of your brand as a storefront, right? A lot of times people think of their product as a singular option. So they're saying, hey, I'm making t-shirts, and I need my t-shirts to be super profitable, or I'm making, so in order to make my t-shirts super profitable, I need to either bulk manufacture or do it myself, right? So that's where people usually are living. They're thinking about their product, their brand as a singular unit. So the way that I always say, and what I always recommend, is that you got to think of your storefront. You got to think of your brand as a storefront. Right? Because if you're selling online, you got a store. And if you go into any store today, it doesn't matter what type of store you go into, very few of them will have just the one product for you to buy.
Sure.
Right. So like if you go into whether it be a Walmart, whether it be a Tilly's or whatever it may be, there's so many other options of products for you to buy. And when it comes to print on demand, that's where you could take advantage of those other products that people can buy. Right. So you definitely want to find a product on print on demand that you can make a good margin with, what it might not be the t-shirt category, it might not be the hoodie category, but it potentially could definitely be the headwear, could be little accessories. Like those are lower cost and have higher margin, right? So you got to think of which products should you put on print on demand to get those those profit margins, and then which products should you consider either bringing in-house for you to make those higher margins. But when it comes to running a business or running an e-commerce store, you have to figure out where your strengths are, right? So you have to know, like, are you the person that's more hands-on and will find efficiencies in what you do? Or are you more of the creative that wants to design and market, right? You got to know which personality you are. And if you can do both, that's like, it's incredible. You're blessed. But then you also run into the rut of like trying to do it all. And then it's very hard for you to go anywhere. So in order to navigate it, I would definitely recommend like which product categories are you going to launch? Which ones could you put to print on demand? So like which ones should you put to print on demand in order for you not to have to buy an embroidery machine or not have to get, a dye sublimation printer, right? Like which ones could you do with print on demand? And then which ones could you efficiently and profitably do on your own if you wanted to, right? So do you have the space? Do you have a garage that you can retrofit? Like you need to treat what you're doing in-house with its respect. Because in order for you to be able to run the business, you need to be able to focus on the designing, marketing as well. You can't just be making the products and then trying to catch up on orders. But it's a good mix if you can make it from home, if you can make it in-house yourself, because you can make content around it. You can tell a story around it. People can see your journey. When it comes to print on demand, it's very hard to see somebody's journey, right? It's like, hey, that's cool. He launched a product. He designed it. Now it's launched. That's kind of cool. But who makes it? Where is it made? Right?
Exactly.
So it's very you have to take advantage of both. And for the longest time when we started our brand back in 2009, like we didn't want to tell people we were making our own samples and doing our own prototyping and making some of our own products. It was almost like, wow, are people going to like that I'm doing it? Like, or do they expect a professional manufacturer to be doing it? Because we're not professional. We're in our garage, right? So now things have shifted and people are okay from buying from individuals. So definitely maximize the ability for you to make some products from home in order to market and brand and tell your story. And then take advantage of the tools like print on demand to increase your profit margins.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I like the idea of doing a mix of both. And that's why I always kind of give this kind of segmented blueprint to like, okay, what have you made successfully with print on demand? Does it make sense to either try to find and partner with a manufacturer, which a lot of people have a lot of struggle with because they don't know where to start with that or where to even go, and how much that'll cost? Or is it time that I buy a $300-$400 press and do something like DTF transfers or something like that, because these are my best sellers and I can do them in-house. So I completely agree and concur with that. So let's say that someone is ready to take that step and they either want to partner with a manufacturer or they do want to bring it in-house, like you said, in their garage. Depending on where you are in life, apartment living might not be so well suited for that. But if you do have a garage, or if you have a neighbor's garage or a friend or somebody, or you're going in on it together, likelihood of them having some sort of space for a normal 16-inch press or something is probably accurate. So where would you guide someone that's ready to kind of take that next step? Because And this is now I think everybody needs to be listening to this in terms of level and figure out where you are in the tier. Like, what level are you ready to go at, and what money are you ready to front? Because the next level is print on demand is cool. That's fine. However, I want to print on Shockaware, or I want to print on Lane 7 or whatever, all this stuff that's not on print on demand because I care about quality. By the way, I think that might be a trap that some people get into, but we can talk about that another time. But let's say somebody's ready to make that step. How do you guide us through like a budget cost analysis to be the most profitable in kind of building your apparel brand?
Definitely. That's such a good question. And the way that I guide it, and the way that I always recommend people start to look at it, is obviously you got to have your budgets. What is it going to cost? What profit margins can you have? But I think the most underrated part of taking that leap is getting the support from whoever you're living with, right? So
Okay.
chances are you're not living by yourself. If you are, then that's awesome. But a lot of people, a lot of times in our community, they're either married, have a significant other, have kids, or have roommates, or still live with their parents. All of that requires you to make sure that they understand what you're going after, right? Because you could put all this money and resources behind it, but then they're nagging you in the back of your mind, like, why are you still doing this? Wait, when are you going to clean this up, right? So there's that struggle that you're going to have off camera and off finances that is going to make it very hard to be successful.
Right.
So the very first thing that you should do before you move money, before you move resources, is definitely make sure that whoever you're with is on the same page with what you're about to do. So a true life example of what happened with me was, I got married finally, I was 26, I think 27 when I got married, and we got our own house. We had a 2-bedroom, and it was a 2-story with 2 bedrooms on the top, master bedroom and a small 10 by 10 bedroom. Right. And we're newlyweds, and we're like, hey, we've got our own house. This is awesome. I saw the master bedroom, and I was like, wow, this is a really cool, it's a huge master bedroom. And I'm like, hey, this could be a really cool office and like workspace, don't you think? And she's like, wait, this is our first house. I'm like, yeah, but how are we going to go to the next level if I don't have a place to work? So is that something that you'd be open to? Right. She's like, you know what? You're right. We only sleep 4 or 5 hours a day anyway, so we can take the 10 by 10, stuff all our clothes in there, and this is our office space, right? So you have to like get on the same page with whoever you're with, so because you're going to take up space that could potentially be used for something. So for me, it was sacrificing the master bedroom for 3 years in order to build up what we were working towards, and it was the best return on my investment, right? So by getting on the same page with whoever you're going to be with, you can make those moves, right? And if you have to move finances, right, because now you're going to maybe go to a manufacturer to make products, you're gonna need to speak with whoever you're living with if that's okay for you to put up, $20K, $30K, or if you have to put it on a credit card, like you got to really ask with yourself, check your own finances. Like, could you sacrifice that? If it absolutely went to zero, would you be okay with that?
Wow. Yeah.
And if all the answers are yes, it checks out, then you're that much more able to start moving in that direction, right? So the easiest way to do it is always to like, there's being price conscious with equipment, and there's also being like a return on investment, right? So if you are going to buy your own equipment, we always say, hey, you could start with a little iron, right? And that's a great way to start. But in reality, if you're going to be making products, you do need something that's going to be good. And when it comes to researching equipment, you need to learn what equipment are you buying and what are the true intricacies behind it, right? So a real example is heat presses, right? There's heat presses you could buy on Amazon. So you could buy heat presses for $200 to $350 on Amazon, a lot of cheaper models around that price range as well. The one thing that a lot of people don't consider, though, is they are cheap, and yes, they do work and they do heat up. But the reason, why is there a $300 press and why is there an $800 press? And then you got to ask yourself, like, what is the key difference? And a lot of the times it's the coils and heating element that are in the press, right? Yeah. So depending on what type of coil system it has, that $300 press may not actually press consistently across the entire platen. So you're going to get bad presses, after a few uses, maybe 6 months down the line, it'll stop working. Like, it still heats up, but it's inconsistent in temperature. So because you bought a $250, $300 press, it almost becomes garbage when it stops pressing that way. Yeah. So some pieces of equipment is better to go, an $800 press that is going to have a 2-year warranty, that has good support, so you could replace or fix whatever's going to happen, because equipment breaks all the time. And then there's obviously the $3,000 presses, and you're like, should I get that? Should I just go for the big ones? Like, I need to go big or go home. And those presses only make sense if you're getting high volume. Like, if you know you're going to be needing to print 50 shirts an hour, like, those presses are for those 50 shirts an hour. You got a full production, because
they're a lot faster, right?
They're faster. They're super consistent. They're auto temperature, pressure gauges. Everything is top of the line in the $3,000 presses.
Got it.
But there's some great $700 to $1,000 presses that I've had for 3 or 4 years and they still work.
Oh,
Actually, the
wow.
one I had for 4 years just broke. Like little stuff starts to break and we fix it, but that one's definitely out of commission now. But that's like 4 years down the line, and I bought it for like 650 at the time. So it was a great return on my investment. So when you're buying equipment, you need to realize like, okay, what is the maintenance on it? What could potentially fail?
Mm,
What is the difference between this price and this price? And don't just ask the sales rep, like you really got to do your research when you're going to invest
okay.
money like that, because it's on you if it doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, now with YouTube, I feel like you got to just watch videos of people using it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep,
let me get proof of concept here, right? Like, this
definitely.
will work and it takes about this long. This is where this person got the sheets from, or the transfer sheets, or whatever it is. This is where they got it from, right? So, yeah, I think in that, a lot of people are not itemizing all of the different things. So, whether it's going to be, I guess, probably to start a one screen printer, if you're going to do that yourself, or it's going to be one of these maybe $600-700 heat presses. You still have you still have the products that you have to buy.
Hmm.
So I mean, do you advise kind of mixing like two method 2 and 4? Like, you do a pre-order for stuff that you can fulfill in house so that you know how much stock to buy. Because I mean, I don't know, it can turn into a lot of, yeah, I don't know, it can
Yeah.
turn into a lot of money really fast with potentially no the volume. I'm not suggesting
Yes.
that someone may not be making any sales. I'm just thinking about volume here. So what do you think?
Yeah. So I would say that I mean, you usually move into this method to start either because now you're looking to grow your sales, right? So you take whatever data you did have from print on demand. Hey, on average, I sold, 60% of my sales were black t-shirts or black hoodies. So, hey, maybe I should buy more stock in black, right? And you kind of have a starting stock based on what you've done historically. And if you don't have that historical data, then you just stock up on what you on the surveys or the polls or the feedback, right? So you've been
Okay.
making reels, you've been making content to like intrigue and engage people. So you use that info to stock up on things. And more than anything, you never really want to overstock, right? So don't overstock. It's always good that you sell out. It's good that it's not available, because it
Okay,
also,
that's good. Yes. Okay, that's really good. Yeah, because I think that's the trap, right? I gotta order 500 so that I always have,
something in
right.
stock.
I
No,
mean,
it's
no,
okay.
just order 50 and be done with it.
Yeah,
You know? Yeah.
exactly. So like this is again going to the like what space can you use? How much money do you have?
Mm,
How can you allocate that to make the most on your return, like the most return on that investment?
right.
So you usually want to use historical data, or you want to use data that you can pull from surveys, from feedback from the audience. Like as you build up an audience and community, you can get that real time. If you don't have any of that, then just say, hey, I'm going to start with 50 and we're going to start making some things. I know that historically in the apparel industry, 50 to 60% of sales happen within black colored garments. So whether it's black t-shirts, black hoodies, so you know that you could order a little bit more darker colors,
Sure.
and then you could test out some of the lighter ones. Or if you know your audience just likes brights and more of that, then go in on that and reduce your blacks. But so in terms of like forecasting what you're going to sell, like you got to pull data, or you got to just start with something and then see how it sells through. And the beauty about this space is that you don't need to put up a lot of money to do this. Like
Okay.
it's not like you have to open up an account and people are telling you, hey, you now have to order 5,000 units from us in order to get these supplies. Like traditionally you do have to qualify for wholesale, so you got to have your business established. But that's really where and why we started Streetcrafter for us, because we realized that even though the industry is a lot easier to do business with, there's still a lot of bottlenecks in like getting a quality material or getting quality supply shipped to you fast that could actually make you money. So that's really where we started with Streetcrafter. Is we produced a line of wholesale. We're going to be carrying a line of different products that are a little bit higher quality, higher premium tier. 400 GSM, more luxury, 100%
Wow.
cotton.
Yeah.
It's what people have been asking for, and we have it on our site, and people are buying it. And now we're having to restock on a lot of colors because we weren't able to forecast it. So we're still
Sure.
learning. We're living and learning, and we're learning in real time. So now the industry is just so much easier to do it from home. And that's really what we wanted to make sure was available in the market was,
Yeah.
hey, if you have some design ideas, you can order sheets. So this is made like on a DTF printer, right, which is
Okay.
direct to film. Yep.
Right.
And these sheets we call press art because when you try to market, DTF, it's not good. But if you say, hey, you upload your art and now you get a roll, you can cut it out, and it's glue on the back. So on the back, it actually adheres to the garment, and then it literally is stuck there for forever. So you don't necessarily need to buy your own printers, right? Right now, people are buying $3,000 to $5,000 printers to make these sheets, and it doesn't make any sense with the mass production that's available in the market today. Like, you don't even need to buy your own printer; you just need to have a good supply and have access to good blanks for you to be able to print from
Okay.
home. So all
Yeah.
you really need is a heat press if you want to get started.
Yeah, excellent. This is perfect segue because I mean I really want to set up a part two with you about some other things, but let's definitely get into Streetcrafter because I want to give you. I know we're approaching the hour here. I want to give you the time to talk about Streetcrafter as you've already started talking about, and I know there's a lot of kind of good nuanced instruction on how to get started. And like you already mentioned earlier, like, hey, get started with what you have. Maybe you have an iron, or maybe you have, like I have a Cricut heat press, like I don't know, 12 by 15 or something like that. And it's fine. I mean, it heats up pretty normally. It was probably about, I don't know, $200. I mean, you got to sit there and you got to hold that sucker. But
Yeah.
why don't you tell me just a little bit more about Streetcrafter and what you provide, and why people would be interested in that. Of course, everything is linked in the description for people to check out. I've already started looking through it, and my brother is actually starting kind of his own kind of streetwear clothing brand, and we were looking at it earlier today. So what why do you think that that's such a good method, and what can we expect, I think, from Streetcrafter? Like, what are you going to be looking at providing? I mean, I see your materials behind you, but are you going to do the auto caps? Like, what do what give me the end all be
Yeah.
for Streetcrafter?
No, this is great. This is awesome because I started Streetcrafter. I had an idea back in like 2019. And at the time, it involved more like it wasn't available, right? So my whole goal and mission when I started the channel is how can we make it where anybody from any country, any city around the world can start? And how can I like break down those barriers, right?
Interesting. Wow.
So we started with education, and like this is the factories and these are the people this is how production of t-shirts would work.
Okay.
And this is where you could source from.
Okay.
Right. So we're educating people on what is cut and sew, how is a t-shirt made, where does stuff come from? Right. So a lot of our content was really geared towards the education of the supply chain, which nobody was doing. And it's honestly a very boring topic to cover, but we had to make it exciting. Right. So for me, it was like, how can I tell this story that's traditionally been very boring into something that's really interesting? And people are like, yo, I never knew this is how it worked. Thank you. I'm starting up my brand. Like,
yeah, I'm super curious in it as a nerd for sure.
Yeah. But the masses in general don't necessarily care for it. But I was like, how can I make this exciting? Like, because it's exciting for me to, like, when you're starting anything, you kind of you need to know what you're getting yourself into, right? So like, the more you know about the products that you're going to buy, the more you're aware of what your limitations and capacity can be, right? So I came from it from that perspective to educate the audience. Once we started educating, I started realizing there's still a lot of barriers between where you can buy stuff and that person being somewhere else, right? So for instance, they can't necessarily. So a lot of the times you can learn about something, but there might be bottlenecks like, hey, you don't have a wholesale license, you don't approve for this, right? Like, you should buy it from a reseller, which now resells that product at a higher cost, so your margins are gone, right? So we always ran into those bottlenecks of what we taught and how people could accomplish it.
Okay.
So for me, that was always an idea of like, how can we empower the everyday person that's sitting in their living room, like I was back in 2009, to actually make a business with less than $100 or less than like literally, if you could prove it out, if you could sell it, like that's all you need. You need those little wins, because with those little wins, you can now start to find the next step to take. So for us, it was developing Streetcrafter, and the reason that it's named that, by the way, it's a very interesting story. I was trying to come up with a name for it, and my wife was she's a big Cricut fan as well. So she
Yeah.
was always, you know, cutting, doing her like decor and stuff. And she went into Target to try to find supplies for Cricut. And she was asking all the cashiers, everybody that worked there, she's like, hey, do you guys know where the Cricuts are? And they're like, Cricut, what is that? You know, so nobody knew. But then you had this guy that was just wearing just this graphic tee, just streetwear, like sagging pants. And he comes up to my wife and is like, hey, are you looking for Cricut? She's like, yeah. He's like, I know where that's at. Come over here. Like, I use this all the time. I make this with it. I make this. I make my own brand with it. Right. So I was like, oh, shit. It's like streetwear, but
Yeah.
it's a street crafter. Right. So the name
okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it's like, so it's a community of people. We named it after the people that are building streetwear brands, that are building quality products from home. They're building it on their own street. They're a crafter, right? So street crafter.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's where the name came from. And with that came the mission of how do we empower them to be their own print shop, right? So like, how can they be their own print shop out of their own home, out of their garage, out of their bedroom, right? Because I saw the shift in these machines radically changing the industry, realizing that a lot of print shops are going to go out of business. But how can we empower the everyday person to take on jobs? And then as they're taking on jobs, they're going to come to a point where like, hey, I need to source this out to a print shop. So the street crafters they start feeding more jobs into the local print shops, right? So it becomes a symbiosis. People can work together in their communities to build a good print network. So that's really where Streetcrafter came from, is empowering the everyday person to be able to make quality products from home. And with that, we launched what I said earlier, which is called Press Art. And Press Art is essentially you upload your art onto our website at streetcrafter.com. From that, you essentially can format it. So whatever you could fit on a sheet, whether you select a 2x2 or a 2x5 feet.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So in here, what you essentially do
you
is
could have more than the same design, or you could have you could have a replica of all the designs. Yeah.
Yep. You can have a replica of all the designs. You can have you could fill in spaces in between with little designs. So you're maximizing your entire sheet.
Right. So if you wanted to do like a step and repeat of your logo in between, then you can do your logo on the front and the big design in the back. Yeah. Like a big gang sheet. Yeah.
A big gang sheet. Yep. So we call it Press Art. The gang sheet is how you gang up the designs. You can whatever you fit. There's no color separation fees. There's no none of that. You can print full color. There's no extra added cost to it. And because of that, we're giving the everyday person the ability to create designs that before would take you, multiple screens, would either have you, have to place high quantities to get. So for us, it's like, hey, order your designs, fill up your sheet. The more you could fit, the more you save.
Wow.
And because of that, you could start printing t-shirts for as low as $5-6, right? And all you need is either an iron, or if you want to go into a production run, you get a heat press. But we're empowering people to get those margins. But again, it goes back to that message of you need to take action. And as you take action, things start to work out and you can see the next step. But we don't want it to be a hurdle that, hey, I didn't have the supplies. A print shop wants too high of a minimum order quantity. Print on demand doesn't give me margins. We're like, guys, this is where you can go. You're a street crafter if you're making things, or if you're down to make things from home. Let's make it happen.
That's amazing. John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I definitely want to set up a part 2 with you. And of course, we'll be doing some tutorials, I think, on Streetcrafter. I would love to get in there and do some tutorials for us. Of course, I mean, you got your YouTube channel. I've got linked down below as well. And everyone, please check out those links. Check out the site. Follow John. Join him over there on YouTube. Is there anything else you want to leave anyone with? Any inspiring or encouraging word? I mean, you've already said so much. I feel like people get fired up after this. But is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off here?
I would say to just work towards being the person that you wish you would have had in your life when you were growing up.
Wow.
Right. So like, who is that person, and can you live to be that person now? Because that's the person that's going to inspire the next generation. So you taking action, you getting results is what's changing a future generation. And I just want you to go out there, pursue it, do it, live and learn it, and it'll all work out. At the end of the day, you take an action, things will come into place. People will buy into your story, into your vision. Everybody loves to collaborate with people that are doing something. So appreciate you for your time, Drew. And thank you guys for watching, and check out our links down below for more.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone so much. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.